What's up, good people? Thank you for tuning in again. It's Tuesday. Thank you once again. We look forward to seeing you on Thursday as we do another pull up and chop. Got one of the partners in crime here today, Dr. Quick, and we're going to talk about social media and theology amongst a few other things. His upcoming work, but just want to get a few of those things out the way as we finish Audre Lorde's text, Sister Outsider, and move on to Toni Morrison in the upcoming week. So if you want to jump in with that, feel free to go ahead and get that text and jump into the conversation. But as I said today, we're talking to Dr. Quick, my man Martin, on his upcoming text, Evangelism, and talk about social media and theology. Now, just to be candid, as I said last week, Martin is a friend of mine. We've known each other for a few days. And also, we've had this conversation. So as we were talking right before we came on, we'll try not to make this conversation like we have the conversation, but please do not be surprised if it does go that route.
Right.
Because honestly, that conversation was a little intense at times, but we will try our best not to let it go that way. So I'll let Martin introduce himself on a more personal level as far as, who he is, what his work centers around, and then we'll kind of move the conversation from that way.
All right, I'm Reverend Dr. Quick. I'm an associate pastor at Journey United Methodist Church in Columbia, South Carolina. And we're going to be discussing my doctoral work that's centered around social media and also theology. It was interesting when I was working on, we have to come up with a project. And so everything in my heart and spirit was, I've been a chaplain resident. I mean, that's my wheelhouse. So I'm like, I'm going to do something. I'm just thinking of a subject I can do on chaplaincy. And every time that I would talk about or either discern about chaplaincy, this social media stuff would just come up. And I'm like, man, I don't even know that stuff that well. I'm on Facebook, but I couldn't even imagine how can I use social media to, in terms of ministry. But it was just evolving. I think 2008 is when Facebook started. So we're talking about 8 years after the inception of Facebook. All of a sudden, I'm trying to figure out a way to, mesh it with, infuse it with ministry. But I kept doing it. And it's funny, my cohorts would always laugh and say, Quick, what's that thing you doing your project on? And it was funny. And so amongst other people, they would laugh and I think it was funny what I was doing. I kind of felt like Noah, right? I'm building this ark because God told me to build it. Everybody's laughing as I'm sitting here trying to figure out, this binary code and how the social media can work. But on March 17th, I think it was, that's when the floods came. And some of my people were trying to get on board of that ark called social media. And some of them didn't make it. And some of them are still struggling, trying to make it. So that's a little preface about, my work and how I got to this place.
Right. And let's be clear. I know we had a couple conversations when you were going through. I read some of your early editions of your project and some of your theological I forget the name, your theological expectations or theological foregrounding. I can't think of the exact biblical rationale. That's right. I read some of that, and we had our stomp down arguments, and I said, look, I understand the rationale and I agree with it, but I wasn't 100% on board with some of the theological rationale, even though I agree with your overall premise. Early on. And I remember calling you when the pandemic hit. I said, okay, you got some prophetic utterances going on there when it hit, because a lot of us were behind the 8 ball when it came to social media and the importance. And so one of the main things that you talked about, and we saw in a couple different ways, was this thing about authentic community.
Yep.
The social media is not an authentic community. Say something about that.
Well, it's funny. Before one of the and you guys know what memes are. Memes are these things that you take this graph, or you take these different pictures and you make something funny about it. But there was a meme that I saw early on. It was a picture of a little chihuahua who was growling, and it was like, social media is the devil. And on the other side, he was smiling, saying, come join me on social media. And it showed the difference between 2019 and 2020. So all these people that were saying, oh, that's not authentic, that's not, God is not in that, that's evil, all of a sudden we're open to, wait a minute, this is authentic. I mean, if this is authentic, then neither is a phone call. Because, I mean, that's the way I do some of my pastoral care. So I think that one of the things that the church has needs to improve upon is having a biblical and theological imagination, and saying that we don't know what God is up to. We try to figure that out for God. You don't know what God is up to. So, being open to something different, to say, well, I don't necessarily see, the details, but just be open to it. And I think that it took this, what I call in my book, a forced evolution for us to finally wake up. And I quoted you in the book where you talk about wake up from that nostalgic stupor where, everything, we've done it this way for so long. But it's amazing what an emergency, and one of my chapters is called the hermeneutic of now, ICE, in case of emergency. That hermeneutic shifts whenever it's an emergency. So you have to understand, how do you respond in an emergency? And I guess sometimes the church just doesn't really deal with emergencies of this nature. Maybe, somebody has to go to the hospital, but an emergency where we can't gather. Mm-hmm. What are we going to do? How do we respond to that? Well, I just saw something on Pew Research Center that 25% of the churches have done nothing to this point, which is amazing. 25% of the church are doing nothing. And so the authenticity part of social media, or just being in presence, people don't understand the difference between when you say something authentic, it's about the connection, not where we gather. It's about the connection. It's not where we gather. Because you can have that, if that were the case, we both are veterans, and you know how important that phone call was when you hadn't talked to your people in 3 or 4 months. That phone call was like a hug, a kiss, a mom's dinner, and all that, when that's all you have. So I think that this pandemic has really opened our eyes to a lot of possibilities.
But even in the gathering, what do you say about folks who say, well, we have telephone worship where I can call in or dial in? Is that not considered social media?
No, not at all. So that would be essentially like saying we have a closed Bible study. We're trying to have a closed Bible study. No one else can come in. That's just a two-way communication. It's between one person and another. Versus when you talk about social media, it's open. You're actually casting this broadcast. You're casting this broadcast out where you don't know who may be able to see it. So I mean, that's the true word of when we talk about evangelism. We're going. So as you are going online, then you share the gospel. As you're going online, share the gospel. So I would say to anybody saying just a telephone call, that would just be an inward focus, and that would certainly not be what the biblical and theological rationale of what Jesus said. For us, the imperative to go. I don't think the phone can facilitate that imperative.
Well, you're not necessarily saying if that's all you have. And let me clarify the all. You know my whole take on all. You know, pos. You know, so I'm not saying that I'm not trying to give people a way out or an excuse, but at least folks, they're in that 25% because they are meeting.
Right.
So though they may not have social media presence, they are connecting.
Yeah, I agree. They are connecting because we still do that. We still do teleconferences for those members who aren't tech savvy. We don't want to leave anybody out. Whatever
right.
Whatever gifts that we have to use or tools that we have to use, we still use those. So actually, Facebook has a feature now that you could actually create. You can actually put a dial-in number that you can dial in and listen to a Facebook Live. So I'm working with some churches helping them with that. So yeah, I mean we want to meet people where they are. Vincent Donovan, Catholic bishop, said evangelization is about not bringing people where we want to be, but meeting them where they are. Just paraphrase what he said. So yeah, if that's all you have, that's fine. I mean, if I got to go to your house and yell out on the porch or whatever, it's not either or. It's a both and. So if you're fishing, you want to be able to, and I use the metaphor fishing because Jesus used it. You want to be able to use whatever tackle. If you got live bait, minnows, jigs, whatever. If I got to just use a scoop you with a net, whatever. I want to use everything in terms of to be able to catch fish and not just be stuck with one singular tackle.
And we'll say what's up to Macedonia United Methodist Church. I'm not sure who the pastor is there.
Yeah, that's Dave. Hey, man, what's going on, Dave? Down in the Low Country, my brother.
And he said the numbers are amazing. The difference between the two.
Yeah.
And then he said, I reach more members on Facebook than on the phone. We offer both during the service.
Absolutely.
And now I've heard you say this, and you said it to me, of course, and in a couple of different ways. But even with the reaches and the engagement, say something about that. Explain that to folks who are on here and may listen to it later.
Yeah. Okay. So reach is that's the number of people that had the opportunity to tune into your service. So that would be how far you cast the net. Like my reach is how far I cast the net, and the engagements will be the number of reactions that somebody saw your broadcast. They either liked it, one of those reaction buttons or they made a comment. So they're actually being engaged. Like what Macedonia Church, that's an engagement. He's watching, made a comment, and that's what I said. That's what you want to do. So we began the broadcast, right? We began the broadcast that was our reach. So all of a sudden, somebody has gotten engaged, which shows a level of commitment. So the goal is to get people from the audience to the altar. The closer, and as I stole from you so many times, and Roberta Flack, the closer I get to you, the more you make me see. And so that's that drawing, because we talked about drawing in the sense of what do you do, in terms of how you get water from a well, you draw it. And so that's the drawing, because it's not just the Wi-Fi or the broadband. It's also the Holy Spirit that's going out via social media. I think people miss that because they're so used to just the traditional way that we evangelize. But that's a good example.
So let me be a tad bit on the controversial side.
All right.
Maybe it may be controversial, but when we talk about the traditional versus this, and I'm not even sure if social media is contemporary anymore. and I don't want to call it normal either. I'm not sure what what we can label it or call it nowadays. But how do we break this tension right now? And we've talked about this a couple of times. How do we break the tension to try to move folk from? And I know you really don't have an answer, but a kind of a thought, a push. How do we move folk from the traditional to this usage of social media, and to see that, hey, this is holy as well? So as the brother said, it's necessary. This is what he just said right in the midst of while I was saying it, which I think is the right word, which is a necessary tool for the enabling, and that's not even the transmitting of the gospel.
Yeah, well, I think some of once you see a witness, once there's a witness to when somebody sends an email in or sends a Facebook message like they did Sunday, and saying that this was a year anniversary in which they clicked on and came on Journey's Facebook broadcast. And she said that if it wasn't for Journey and what the church has done for her and her family, she didn't think she could make it through the pandemic. This person lives in Charleston. And so we had an after church meeting, and the looks on people's faces when they heard that text was like, wow, this is making a difference. I looked at the media and AV team. I'm like, you guys are the ones that are making this stuff happen on this broadcast happen. So you're part of this. Without you, Rev and I couldn't be broadcast, or the praise team couldn't be seen in places. And we get messages like this from Germany, Switzerland. Matter of fact, there's over 40 countries that, when I looked at our Facebook statistics, that have come and somebody has engaged our broadcast from 40 different countries. And so once you see a witness and you're like, yeah, this works, because it's almost like those folks that didn't see witnesses, they didn't believe. A lot of people didn't believe until they saw. And one of my chapters, I addressed that when I used Doubting Thomas for an example, and it's called chapter 5, getting your shift together, meaning that there's a witness. If you ask the right questions, and maybe you can get the right answers, but you have to be open. But what I found is people are closed-minded, and I'll say, and because they're used to doing something a certain way. I ask questions. So how does it work at your church? Oh, we don't do that. So how can you draw a conclusion when you have no basis to even to have an opinion? You can have an opinion, but you don't have any real research, because there are some prominent preachers here in Columbia who said, man, I don't do this because people are not going to come to church. People are not going to come to church if they can see me on I'm like, there's no research to back that up. There's no research to back up that people just don't come to church. Because if that were the case, they could just watch, any preacher online, the big time preachers or whatever they want to call it. So that just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, with folks seeing ministries online during the pandemic, we all know that folks are not, let's just say, and let's give it a rough percentage though, 35% of people are not going back to church.
No. So
is there some truth into what they're saying?
No, but that's not the reason why they're not going back to church, because they're scared of COVID. I don't think
let's remove outside of the COVID. Outside of COVID, because that's true too. Right. But also outside of COVID, folk don't been at the house looking at whoever. I don't want to say no names because I may not agree with all them folk, even though they may be outstanding. But folks may not go back because they say, I can watch 10 people in the time that it takes me to put on clothes, go to church, go do the song and dance, and come back home. I can have watched 10 services. So is there an element of truth in your perspective?
Well,
I think there's a level of truth to it.
I mean, there is, but it's not a negative thing. I mean,
right.
It's about relationship, not membership.
Right.
You know, I mean, because there are people that are homebound that can't come to church. I mean, for somebody who says that, I'm like, so you're telling me that somebody's homebound that can't, what they say, are they forsaking the assembly? No, they can't come to church. Or if somebody chooses not to go to church. One of the biggest issues I have when people say, okay, well, they'll say, well, we can't wait to get back to church. Well, see, being a numbers person, we knew before COVID, people went to church 1.8 Sundays a month anyway. Mm-hmm. So church was open. You still didn't come every Sunday. So, so those, I mean, so that even that same premise that people are saying, well, people will stay home. If they stay, let's keep it real. If they stay home and give, would they have a problem?
No.
Okay.
Look,
I digress on that.
Look, we know good and well, and this is not to cast dispersion down on pastors. I just tell the truth, and if they don't like it, hey, I invite them to come on and speak their truth. But if pastors, if folk could figure out a way to have an online church and still get 95% tithing, there wouldn't be a building in Columbia, Houston, Chicago, Atlanta, Atlanta, Bennettsville. We wouldn't see a building anywhere because guess what? It's more cost efficient not to have a building.
And you could do more ministry outside of the building.
Exactly.
We realize that, really? So honestly, we could have a small, we have a very nice facility here, but we realize that, with this restriction in terms of COVID, you can't have people in. Look at what you can do ministry-wise whenever, you don't have to spend money in different places. So it makes you have a biblical and a theological imagination to say, how can we do this differently? Or what can we do different? Because and I told people, that's chapter 16, there will be a hybrid model of church, right? I call it the temple and the tabernacle. The tabernacle was agile, nimble, where you could go pick it up when you needed to. That would be the internet or social media. And the temple was a stationary place where you worship. But you need both now. You need both for this community. You need both because there's going to be another breakout of something again. There's going to be snow where, because one time when it snowed, we had to cancel service.
That's
Matter of fact, what you can cancel is a sign that says we cancel service. So the only way you better cancel service is the internet not working or something like that. Well, other than that, you can just play. I mean, you could you're able to respond, which is the hermeneutic now through those emergency situations.
Right.
Versus just saying, look, you know what? We ain't having church today. We just can't have church because something happened. Right. And I think it's a good thing that we have this gift. And again, social media is not trying to replace in-person worship.
Right.
It's to complement in-person worship because people watch evangelists on TV all the time. Like who doesn't watch, somebody preach on TV? I mean, so I don't see how there's so much of a radical difference in terms of social media. It's just that people don't know social media because they really hadn't tried it. And now that people are trying it, the ones that are getting on board, they're like, man, I should have been doing this the whole time. And then I wouldn't have had such a difficult time trying to respond to the pandemic because trying to jump online. Matter of fact, the week after is when the church actually broke the internet because everybody jumped on Facebook that Sunday and the servers they couldn't. I was like, oh, whoa, what's going on here? And so we could have been doing that the whole time, but for whatever reason, not everybody saw that.
Right. Well, let's say more about your upcoming text, evangelism, creating and implementing a social media ministry for outreach. I know you're in the midst of editing and finishing that piece up. And you gave us a lot of the information that you shared is straight out the book. But tell us more about that. Or tell them, because I actually know most of it.
Well, I think, and in my introduction, I think I can't quote it because I can't remember what I have in front of me. But what I said is, if you are merely trying to get online, right, this book is not for you. This book is for church leaders who want to have an online ministry. Being online is something that you do for your church.
Say that again, preacher.
I said there's a difference between just being online, which is hitting Facebook Live and say, hey, y'all see me? I'm here, I'm preaching, versus having an online ministry.
That's
because
good.
See, the difference is when you're just broadcasting, hitting Facebook Live, that's what you're doing for the church. Right? But the ministry is when you have to reach out to somebody who came on your broadcast, a pandemic conversation with parents who are struggling. I think it's courageous conversations during COVID. That's ministry. Or you post, we're having COVID testing here. Or you post, well, this is where you can get your vaccinations. You're doing ministry and outreach to the community versus saying, I'm online. One of the biggest things that I see one of the biggest mistakes I see that people make when it comes to social media in church, they use it as an infomercial. Like all they do is talk about the church.
Right.
Come join us. We're on Wednesday, Sunday. But it's social media. The social comes first, then the media. Media is how you get things out there, but the social piece is how you connect. And that's not just being a Bible thumper. One of the most engagements that I've gotten since I've been doing this was a post on what sauce do you put on your Chick-fil-A nuggets. I got everybody wanted to comment. So what happens when they comment? So the algorithm picks up all this activity. And so whenever I go live or the church goes live, then the algorithm picks up the church and makes it available to more people's platforms or pages rather, because of the activity, because it's all advertisement driven.
Right.
So that's what I see. 80% of your posts should be inspiration, information, and education and entertainment. The other 20% should be invitation. So out of 5 posts, let's say 5 posts that you're going to do, 2 will be come join us. The other 3 will be about something totally different. But you can push your engagements toward, and that's why engagements are important, because you can push those engagements and push them toward where you want people to go. So it's like you lead them. It's like you lead breadcrumbs. Like, okay, so what do y'all think about this? And what do y'all think about that? And so what do you think about this? So you got a bunch of people, and then you say, hey, by the way, join us tomorrow. Right? Yeah. But you got to people follow you. I posted a prayer about 8 months ago at 5:30 in the morning. I had nothing better to do. I couldn't sleep. And man, as soon as I posted, 3 people liked it. Boom, boom, boom. I was like, people are up at 5:30? I'm like, well, I'm up. So I did it again. So I did it for that whole week. I was like, man, this is getting old, man. This is up, And so that next week, I got 6 direct messages. Only 2 of them were members saying, why did you stop posting the prayer at 5:30? So you go to Journey's Facebook page at 5:30, you will see a prayer every morning. But now I schedule the post. I don't have to put up.
Right.
So that way, that's what I want people to know. You don't have to get up at 5:30. You can schedule the post. And I talk about that in my book, how to create what I call a content calendar or a content cal, where you could actually, make a list of what, which platform you want to use, why you want to use it, what time. So you schedule it, because again, it's a ministry. It's not something you do at one time. So you want to sit down with your team, if you have a team, and come up and what I call curate good content.
That's
good,
right.
Engaging content that can be a bit controversial at times. You don't want to say Democrat, or Republican, no, but you might want to say, how do y'all feel about the schools reopening so early with COVID? Things like that, usually get some good engagement. But that's what you want to do. You want to try to control, not control it, but put the content out there, get the engagements, and make sure you comment on everybody or like everybody's post. I mean, it's too many things or easy ways to get engagements. Like I'm seeing a lot of people not taking advantage of Women's History Month. I mean, this is a big deal. Like,
yeah,
it would be good for you to post some women's history, especially things that people don't know.
exactly.
And that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna say, I'm gonna show people that I'm really smart, because it's what? Social media. So they share the post. So when they share it, somebody else shares it, and all of a sudden you've taken this one post, and it's organic, and it keeps living on.
Let me go back. Brother Sean said, interesting subject. He was on last week.
Yeah, I saw. Hey, good piece, Sean. Loved it. Awesome.
And Brother David, right? Brother Pastor David.
Yeah.
He says, where can I get the book? Need it before July. Something special happening in July.
You'll have it before July. It'll be in April, definitely. So, man, I didn't realize how hard editing was.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
hey, a funny story. I let Brian read one of the chapters, and he tore it apart, man. So I was like, okay, let me go back in and make myself clear. And it wasn't that I was, so much off base, but it needs to be communicated very clear. And I respect that, because I don't want it to be difficult, because that's why a lot of people don't use social media. They think it's difficult. Right. So I went back and tore it down and built it back up. So definitely, Dave, it'll be out there, man, next month, early part of April. My editor, she is a beast.
And let me say this. And let me say this. In last two questions, say something about kind of briefly about the importance of having a social media team.
Mm-hmm.
And because I've been seeing that a lot, not so much a social media team, but a need for a social media team, but also a social media pastor, online pastor. I've been seeing that a lot of churches, if they could afford it, have been hiring for that part-time or full-time because they have been doing so many sermons online and messages online, and getting back to that, because we've seen how that works, through what you all have done at Journey. I've seen it personally, how that happens. So talk about the need for that, and before I ask this last question.
Yeah, I think it's important to have a team of people for a lot of reasons. And the team has to be diverse, because one of my chapters I talk about, chapter 11, says all generations matter. And what happens is, when you don't have a team of people in different lanes, you have a tendency to kind of just take this linear path in what you post, and you're only attracting a certain amount of people. So one of the chapters is know your tools. So once you learn these social media tools, right, then you got to learn which tool, and you got to learn what tool for whatever you're trying to do and whoever you're trying to reach. If I'm talking about us having something for people 15 and under, Facebook is not the tool I need.
Right.
I need TikTok, I need Instagram. If I'm talking to some seniors about something that's going on, I want to, get them engaged, I need Facebook. And so, having a team of people who can curate the things you need to post, and also give you those lens to say, this is what I see. So on my team, I got people, I got some retirees, and they have a specific task that they do every Sunday for me when I'm the digital pastor. So if something's not right, they're gonna call me. So I have this earpiece in, I'm listening, I'm in the service, but I'm also have this headsets on, and I got different people who are seeing different things. Because there's a word that may, somebody say, oh man, that's that word was off, or that word, I didn't like the way that happened. So I got to try to, some kind of way mitigate that from it being an issue later. So that whole thing is a process of a team of people that are helping me. So when we're engaging people, welcoming people, there's other people that are what I call my social media ambassadors here that are helping us with people onboarding or saying, hey, welcome to Journey. One of the things that we do is we say, hey, if you're a guest, post G. Soon as that G comes out, everybody, all our church members like, welcome to Journey, welcome to Journey. Welcome. People are like, whoa, welcome to Journey. Same way, if you came in this building and we're in the building, a guest comes through that door, man, somebody got out of their bed and came to our church, we're on them and say, hey. And so that takes a team effort, because there's no way one person can be able to do that. And so for me now, I'll be honest, it's easier for me to preach than to be the digital pastor. And that's just totally honest, because there's so many things in an hour, 15 minutes that's coming at me. So not only that, I'm also the producer in terms of making sure the time. So if you were inside, you'd hear me say 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're live. Boom, because we have transitional videos in between when we move sets. And so when that video goes off, we're moving things. So all these moving pieces are going on at one time. Sometimes I'll see somebody on the that's coming off on the video, the praise team, and I'll look at somebody and say, hey, you need to scoot to the left a little bit. Or if I see Rev and he's maybe giving an invitation, I'll be like, hey, come closer to the stage. We need you closer, to the camera. Or look, hey, get your eyes up, look toward the camera. So all that's going on at one time. And if you don't have somebody to help you with that, there's no way.
Right.
No way you can do that all by yourself. There's no way you can be effective, because I promise you, the chapter when I got preached live stream during the pandemic, and Brian, you've heard me my lecture on that in terms of how to use more hand movements, how to slow your speech down, but with more energy. Now that's hard. That's what drains you. You speak slower with more energy, and so all that's going on at one time, and so that's why you need a team of people to make sure all that's happening.
It's amazing you say that. I was looking at Questlove do this drumming set one day, and he said the way that he practiced is keeping a beat slowly. He says, as a drummer, that's the hardest thing in the world, is to keep in the same beat slow. Yeah. He says it's nearly impossible. He says he doesn't know a drummer that can do it. He said, but that's how you practice, being on tempo, is doing a beat slowly. And that's kind of reminiscent of what you're talking about as far as, speaking in front of the camera. I remember the first time I started doing preaching on Saturday, I almost was losing my mind, because, the people give you the rhythm, you know what I mean? So that go ahead and say that, brother.
Right.
That gives you rhythm. When you're talking and I'm talking back to you, you give me that rhythm. But when you have to sit there and there's nobody giving you the back and forth, whole different ball game. So I get that 100%. We had Sean said, thanks, brother, for the compliment. Jay Dwayne said, not seniors.
What does he mean by that? Like,
I think you should call them young people. I don't know. I think he laughed. I think he got the laughing emojis.
It's fun. It's fun. But once you get, like, my mom was on. She comes on Journey all the time. I'm like, Mom, don't say nothing crazy. And so I'm like, but I mean, you just got to make it. You got to make sure they're seen. And that's the thing. That's why the kids, the short dude, he got in the tree because he wanted to see Jesus. And he also wanted to be seen. And so that's the social part. But, the media part and the presence part is trying to get people from the audience to the altar. Every time somebody comes on, they say, welcome to Journey. We say, welcome to Journey, and we add their name. I said, look, sometimes it gets hectic, but you need to say welcome, Brian. Welcome, Dwayne. Welcome, Dave. I mean, it just makes a difference.
Right.
Because that's sometimes you can't even do that when people coming in church.
Right.
But you're able to do that. And the people are engaging each other. Hey, we miss y'all. And I just sit back and I'm amazed. Like I said, when I witnessed this, I was like, man, this is real. Like, who could say this isn't real? You see emojis. You think emojis are not real? So one of the things I have a prompt I put for amens. I got hearts for amens. Man, if you see in the midst of when the praise team is singing in the band, all you see is hearts going on, hearts. Or when Rev or myself are preaching, you see hearts, and people are feeling that. They're feeling, because we're trying to be as genuine and authentic as possible. And those emojis, I mean, those, it's different, but I mean, it works. It works. When you're not, when you can't, be in person, that those things resonate with people.
Sean says very correct about how to maintain a social media presence is almost quid pro quo game.
Yeah.
And Jay Dwayne said Facebook is not for seniors. Oh man, let me show the book again. It's coming out in April.
It's April, definitely April.
Oh, wrong book.
I'll tell you that one. I know that one is said. That was sold copies.
Evangelism.
Yeah.
Coming out in the April.
Yeah, April.
So that's the cover.
That's the cover right there.
So look out for it coming to a platform near you. Will it be hardcover and
No, well, yeah, it'll be paperback and ebook.
That's what I meant, paperback and ebook. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, here's my last question, and I told Sean last week. I said this is the mandatory question. If you can't answer this question, you will never return again.
All right.
So before you go, I need your top 5.
Top 5. What?
Oh, MCs.
Oh, that's easy. That's easy. My number 1 will be Rakim. Number 2, Biggie. Number 3.
You don't have to be in the order. It don't have to be in the order.
Oh, Nas.
Okay.
Jay-Z. And wow. Either Kweli or Mos Def. Mos Def. I mean, either one of them cats.
Well, we don't know who Mos Def is anymore. He goes by Yassine Bey.
Well, him. That's it. Yeah.
All right. You might get a return. You might get a return. Sean had a little issue last week until he got off. You had the shirt on and you didn't say the person whose name was on your shirt.
Well, look, I'm straight out of context. Theology matters. So I'm trying
Yeah. I'm rocking that. I'm rocking that BC 98.
Yeah.
BC 98. BC.
That's hard, man. I like that.
So
I like that.
Hey, we appreciate y'all tuning in. Once again, we'll see y'all Thursday. Come back for the last conversation on Sister Outsider before we move to the origin of the others.
Yeah, Tony Marsden.
So Tony Marsden's of the other. Remember to go out. We'll post it when it finally drops sometime in April.
Yeah. I'm working on the trailer right now. It's different. I'm working on a book trailer, which will be on all platforms. Working on that right now.
Okay, you heard it. So it's gonna drop soon. So we looking forward to it, man. Looking forward to it. Hey, remember this: survive, cultivate joy, resist, and stay dope. We'll see you next week. Or Thursday.